Hey guys, and welcome back to a new chapter of this fanfic. Welcome to the third season of What If Naruto Was a Prodigy and Was Abandoned by His Family. As always, remember that if you want more seasons, just leave me a like, comment, and subscribe. So then, enjoy the fanfic.
Chapter 13. Hey you fucking psycho. You gonna tell us why we're here or not? Yelled the Tsunade from her position on her pillar. Naruto stared over to her without saying anything. Her group consisted of only herself and her selected jonin. A chubby man Naruto recognized from the bingo book as Akatsuchi. From the information he received on the hot-headed Kage, she was brash, vulgar, and very temperamental, so he ignored her impertinent statement. Ino, however, did not like that she was insulting her man. You bitch! Don't you fucking talk to him like that! Naruto simply put his hand up, ending the string of curse words resting on her tongue. She huffed in relent and went back to playing with Samire, silently spitting out words of venom. Naruto stepped back a bit and walked towards the second prize slot where Makatsuchi was chained. Her watering eyes were piercing into her friends in desperation. I believe you are here to retrieve your prize. Naruto spoke, drawing the much more subdued-looking Kage's gaze. The Tsuchikige's tear-filled gaze was piercing Naruto's eye holes with a look that promised death. You're fucking right. And if you laid one finger on her, I swear I'll fucking kill you. She growled out, not intimidating him in the slightest. Naruto nodded at the statement and stepped back to the center of the platform. I assure you, none of them have been hurt. They are merely incentives for your participation, he said, walking to the very edge of the cliff and sitting down with his feet hanging over. The Kage were all visibly aggravated by the act. His casual demeanor about the whole situation infuriated them. Tired of the procrastination, the Raikage spoke up. The letter said we would receive more information upon our arrival, he said, as if Naruto forgot or something. Naruto looked over to him and examined his party. There was a man he assumed to be the strongest jonin of their village, Killer Bee. Then, the blonde woman he knew to be the boy's mother. The previous Raikage was not in attendance, however, which Naruto found strange. He was unaware he had died. Yes, and you will Raikage. In time. First, I'd like to explain my reasoning for this venture, he said, receiving an uproar of disgruntled protests. Naruto simply waited for them to quiet down. No fucking way! Yelled the Tsuchikage as she took a threatening step forward that was useless in retrospect. I'm here for Makatsuchi. I didn't come to listen to your cracked-out plan. We don't want to play your games. Chuckles. I want my son back, yelled a man wearing a strange black suit with face paint standing behind the Kazekage. He was the only one accompanying him. As do I, the Raikage said smoothly. We would very much rather begin whatever trial you have set up, he said, looking up to his son, who was looking at his mother, trying to reassure him. Naruto listened to all of their complaints impassively. He turned his head to the right and stared at the blue-haired Kage looking over at his wife. His group consisting of another blue-haired man with an eye patch and a bald man with two broadswords on his back. What of you, Mizukage? Do you have any complaints? He asked for no apparent reason. The Mizukage gazed at him in contempt and grit his teeth. Let's just get this over with, he growled out. Naruto turned back to the middle, staring across the way at the one group that remained silent throughout. The biggest group of them all, with 3 Kage-level shinobi and his mother. He didn't address them directly, but he did speak towards them. Maybe my instructions were not as complete as I had thought they would be, he said, pulling for kunai from nowhere. He threw them up into the air expertly, and each one landed next to one of the respective prizes with a paper bomb connected to their loops. The group of Kage remained silent, all now more fearful for what they were to say from this point on. You do as I say when I say and you get your prize. You don't and your prize is eliminated. Simple as that. He let that statement hang in the air for a few seconds, watching everyone's reaction. As expected, they were all staring at him with the intent to kill. Naruto was completely unfazed and met their gazes with little effort. Now, to begin, he said, returning to a casual demeanor. I do not like you. They all looked at each other, finding that to be obvious. I don't like you. I don't like what it is you represent, and I despise the people that follow you, even though they do so with no fault of their own. he said. You have a blatant hatred for the shinobi villages. The Kazekage said, summarizing what he was saying. Naruto shrugged. In a way, my hatred, as you called it, extends to a much broader spectrum, he said. Hypocrisy is something I despise, and you people have it in spades. So what? You hate that we're hypocrites? The Tsuchikage asked incredulously. That's why you're doing this? Naruto shook his head. No. That is but a minor reason for today's test. He quipped, rubbing at his shoulder for some reason. Before we begin, you all must understand what it is that I propose and why I am proposing it, he said. So this is some kind of game to you? Asked the Mizukage in a threatening way. Naruto tilted his head in his direction. Well, of course it is. Which is why you lot have prizes, he said as if it were obvious. Now, to further your understanding, I must explain the role you play in society. It is an awful thing you do, you just don't realize it. What are you talking about? Asked Menma, speaking up for the first time. Naruto stared at him. Patience, Hokage. We've got all day, he said ominously. You all are the respective keepers of order within your own villages. The pinnacle of apparent success that every wide-eyed child strives to achieve. Yet, what you're doing is far from righteous. Okay, hold on, said the Tsuchikage with an arrogant smirk on her face. I already figured it out, she said. Naruto just stared at her, awaiting whatever ridiculous set of words about to fly out of her mouth. Ridiculous they were. You were one of these wide-eyed children pining for the position of a Kage. When you didn't get it, you were thrusted into a life of hatred and self-loathing that made you hate the position and the system of the villages altogether. Now, you came up with this psychotic fucking plan to show everyone who's ever wronged you how stupid they were for not giving you the position. She finished, crossing her arms with a smug look as if she were certain she was right on the nose. The entire area had returned to silence, everyone pondering the possibility that she was possibly correct. A sudden outburst of untamed chuckles caught them all off guard as Ino bellowed out with a sincere laugh at the ridiculous statement. They couldn't see it, but they could just feel the smirk on the masked man's face and even noticed how his shoulders bounced slightly, indicating he was chuckling silently to himself. The blonde with the tears of overwhelming giggles is what caught everyone's attention. Ha ha ha! You ha ha! You dumb bitch! Ha ha! She yelled out through her fit of laughter. For no true reason, the Tsuchikage was starting to feel a little embarrassment at their blatant disrespect to her knowledge. It was a sound assumption considering the things he was saying. Shut up, you! She couldn't even find the words to insult the blonde woman, ignoring her completely in place of belly-aching laughter. Naruto seemed to finally calm down and raised his hand for Ino to as well. Slowly but surely her incessant laughter died out. Interesting theory. Not correct, but interesting, he said with a hint of amusement tickling his tone. No, Tsuchikage. In honesty, I have never truly cared for the position of a Kage until my recent despise, he admitted. What sparked it? Asked Minato, speaking up for the first time. Naruto stared at him for a moment. Literature. Believe it or not, he said, pulling a book from his pouch. Everyone was surprised by that answer. You mean, a book told you to do all of this? Kakashi asked the question on everyone's mind. Naruto just shrugged. Not necessarily. This particular book simply unchained me and allowed me to leave my cave, he said cryptically. Tisage figures he'd live in a cave, the Tsuchikage said under her breath. Naruto ignored the statement and continued on. Figuratively speaking, he said. I believe you must hear this story to understand how it ties into you, he said. You see, there was a man who was chained to the back of a cave, facing away from the opening. He was born within it and had never seen anything other than the shadows casted from the various creatures and people that passed by. For all his life, the only company he had was that of a man's shadow that would stop and speak with him every day and tell him of the things he was protecting him from. This shadow man told him that the things he was seeing were creatures of unspeakable horror, and that by being in this cave, he was safe from harm. I'm not seeing how this ties into us. This just seems like a fictitious story, the Mizukage said, speaking up for everyone. Naruto continued on. The Shadow Man successfully convinced the prisoner that he was doing the right thing by keeping him in there. Years later, when he was finally freed from his shackles, he remained in his position, too afraid to leave the sanctuary of his cave for fear of the creatures lurking on the outside world, unaware that they were just regular people. You Kage are the shadows to your villages. You keep your people in ignorance with your words. I mean, it's even written in your names. The Mizukage was the one to respond. You're wrong, he said. If what you are saying is true, then what are we protecting them from? Monsters like you? He asked. Naruto smiled beneath his mask. Oh, I'm not a monster. I'm just ahead of the curve. Wink. Naruto cocked his head in amusement. Chaos Mizukage. You lot are protecting them from the joys and the serenity of chaos, he said, letting that ring in the air. You instill order because it is a belief of yours that was inculcated by your own predecessors that chaos is bad. In this theory, it's a little paradoxical how you are both prisoners and the oppressors. It is bad, Minato said, speaking up again. Since you enjoy explaining things so much, allow me to teach you something. Naruto nodded his head that way, gesturing for him to continue. If you are speaking of chaos in terms of war, then you truly have no idea what you're talking about. War is a time period in which you must do anything you are forced to do for the sake of your home. It is bad. Naruto didn't say anything for a few seconds. He just examined the blonde man, judging his resolve. War, he began, is nothing more than the manifestation of a struggle for order. It is a man-made catastrophe that would be imprudent to blame on something other than ourselves, he said, infuriating the older attendants who've seen it before. Is it really all that bad? Being able to cut loose and become the killers we were meant to be, he said, mocking their hatred of the subject. We were not made to be killers, the Kazekage said, a little ticked off by that statement. No one is made to be a killer, Naruto sighed. Huh, wrong again, he said, rolling his neck out as if it were just completely exhausting talking to them. We were all meant to be killers, and I don't just mean shinobi, I mean all of the human race. That's why we were given the ability to kill. Think about it like this: a kunai was made for the purpose of killing, and it does it well. He nodded vigorously as if to say he knew that all too well. It was not made to be toilet paper, so it cannot function as such. Human beings were created to kill. It is how we survive in this world. It's why we were given such intelligence to advance our tactics. It's why war was invented. We were all made to kill, but modern society tells us it's bad, so at a young age we are taught that taking the life of another is wrong. This lesson is drilled into us so vigorously that once we are forced to do so, the action itself is sickening. Then you do it again and that guilt remains. A few more times and it starts to become routine, until finally you've become who you were meant to be, and you get shamed for it. That sounds like the making of a fucking psycho to me, that Tsuchikage chided in. Naruto just shrugged. If that's how you see it. But, by that logic, every shinobi that has ever taken the life of an enemy with no remorse is as psychotic as you claim. In this world of ours, there is no innocent power. Strength for us is based on our ability to take the life of another, and yet you all have the audacity to stand here and claim we weren't created for such a thing. If you weren't all so crazy, I'd think you were insane. Wink, he said, holding his hand up to his mouth as if he were whispering something. The Tsuchikage's lone guest, who had been quiet up to this point, finally lost his temper. You shut your mouth. You don't know what it's like, he yelled out in anger. Being an older man, it was fair to assume he was around during the time of the previous war. Naruto looked to him. Oh, I know what it's like. Believe me, I understand, he said. No, you don't, Minato quipped with a knowing tone. Naruto looked back to him. No, I know for a fact that you don't, he said, raising his voice slightly to drive his point home. Naruto grinned beneath his mask. Is war not just a struggle between two sides to gain the upper hand, using every underhanded tactic imaginable? Minato remained quiet. That was a pretty fair description. War is much more than bloodshed and loss. If that's what you assumed it to be, then I assure you I've experienced that as well, in a much more grotesque manner than even you. Minato shook his head. You really don't understand, Naruto chuckled. Well then, Yondaime, What is war to you? Minato froze, noticing the stares he was receiving from the other older members of the villages. Everyone there knew of what a terror he was during the last war, but it was a different thing completely witnessing it yourself. War is complete and utter hell. In every sense of the word, to be functional in a world of such true chaos. You've got to kill off pieces of yourself that make you human. Before he could continue, he heard a scoff from the one he was speaking to. Naruto noticed Minato's hesitation. My apologies, he said bashfully. I just found it outrageous that you actually view war as true chaos. What was he saying? Most people would view it as the truest meaning of the word. Minato disputed. Everyone watched the blonde woman get up from her seat and place the child she was holding into a carrier and set her down on the middle of the platform behind Naruto. Naruto just shrugged. Then most people would be wrong. He replied, war is ordered chaos. Factions of methodical groups of soldiers facing off for the purpose of proving themselves. It's much more barbaric, he said as Ino plopped down next to him. You see, true chaos is actually irrelevant to me. Non-existent in a sense. At this statement, everyone looked at him strangely. This entire time he seemed to have been advocating for chaos, and now he was saying it didn't even exist? Paradoxical, I know, he said, putting their busy minds to rest. Chaos is described as something that one could not possibly understand. Complete disorder and confusion. Problem is, when this comes to mind, you all have a single image that you associate with the word, he said, playing with the kunai in his hands. You picture a lawless world with people running around and killing anyone and everyone for their own motives or just no reason at all. Yeah, is that what you're trying to make the world become? Asked the Tsunade. Couldn't hurt, he replied. The reason I do not believe chaos exists is because to me, there is no confusion. You all would view a world such as that as some kind of hellish struggle of life and death, but there is much more to it than that. Every word he said was accented by the wind that was beginning to kick up and the apparent brewing storm. While you see disorder, I see freedom. As you see illicitness, I see equality. Looking at the world in a different way does not make it a better place if it comes to what you are describing. The Kazekage argued with his ever-present monotonous voice. You are just blinding yourself from the horror of the crimes being committed. Ah! Naruto quipped up. He snapped his fingers and pointed in his direction. There goes that famed hypocrisy, he replied with amusement. You say this, Kazekage, but you cast this same fate upon your people without their consent. In the world I speak of, they would be free to choose which side they wish to view. What of the people that would view it the way you claim we would? The Mizukage asked. The people who would view it as a hell and search for a better life? Naruto continued playing with his kunai. Astute point, Mizukage. But there is something unique about chaos that sets it apart from its colleague, he said. They share a lot of the same qualities and possess radical differences, but one thing that sticks out to me the most is that chaos is fair. Wink. And you believe order is not? The Raikage asked from his spot. Naruto looked over to him. Well, of course not. You yourself are a testament to that Raikage, he said, getting a strange look from him. In fact, most of you are, he clarified. You all have this false belief that with a little hard work anyone with a strong enough will could climb their way up the ranks and make it to a position such as yours, yet you all neglect to see that your lives have all led you to your positions. You all held some sort of connection to your previous Kage, whether it be student, child, grandchild, or just simply a blatant favorite in the case of you, Mizukage. My position was earned fairly, said the Raikage, receiving shouts of agreement from the other four. Naruto nodded. Oh, I'm sure, he said. I am sure every other child your age had the privilege of training under the Sandaime Raikage, or the Sandaime Tsuchikage, or the Yondaime Hokage. Point is, regardless of what you may believe, your position was achieved with the advantage of tutelage under a powerful shinobi. Most of the other children of your villages were probably pawned off on some ordinary jonin who was at the least barely capable of teaching them the basics. There have been shinobi in the past who have achieved power without the tutelage of anyone. You would know about that, right? Minato asked with the underlining implication that Naruto was one of these people. Actually, I wouldn't, Naruto replied. If you are implying that I am self-made, then you are mistaken. Just because no one held my hand and walked me through the steps doesn't mean they didn't teach me. Okay, hold on, the Tsuchikage said. What the fuck is it with you two? She asked, looking at Minato. You've been sitting here talking to him like you know him or something. Who the fuck is he? He's from Konoha, isn't he? She yelled. Minato ignored her. If that's what this is about, please. You don't have to do all of this. Just take your revenge and be done with it. Naruto just stared at him. You give yourself too much credit, Yondaime, he said, standing up and throwing the kunai over his shoulder. It landed right next to Sumire's carrier, a paper bomb attached to the ring. I hold no anger towards you specifically, or your wife. My goal is much more interesting than petty revenge. It's not that kind of story. We gonna start, hun? Ino quipped, hopping to her feet as well. She looped Naruto's arm and followed him as they walked back to their thrones. Yes, we are. When they sat down, Naruto surveyed the group of shinobi. Okay, let's see. Why don't you pick Dollface? Ino sat up happily. Oh, okay. Ipayak. IWA. Ayan Suna, she said happily. Naruto nodded, appraising her selection. Very well, he said. He went through hand signs, and in a flash that Menma and Minato knew all too well, the Kazekage and Iwa's lone jonin appeared in the arena. The Tsuchikage ran forward and put her hands on the barrier. Hey, what the hell are you doing? He's no match for a Kage, she yelled. Akatsuchi, the Kazekage was looking at the man in question. It was a very hefty-looking man with a big nose. He then turned and looked up to the masked man. What is the purpose of this? Naruto shrugged. I just want to see what happens, he replied portentously. Don't wait on me. Start whenever you wish. Nobody moved a muscle. I have no quarrel with this man, the Kazekage said with his arms crossed. He refused to fight a man who had done him no harm. Of course you do, Naruto said. This man here is keeping you from retrieving your prize, he said, pointing over to the Kazekage's nephew. Everyone grew alarmed seeing that the explosive tag was burning. Wait, the Kazekage yelled, raising his hand up to him. Wait, I'll fight, he yelled, trying to get the man to stop the burning of the seal. Naruto shrugged. Oh, I'm sure you will, he said casually. That seal is a slow-burning tag. It will blow in 2 minutes unless I stop it. Sadly to say, as long as this man is still breathing, I will not do so. Everyone grew horrified at the implication. The Kazekage's eyes were burning with rage. He was trying to weigh what would be the right thing to do. From the deathly stare he was getting from the Tsuchikage, he just knew there would be hell to pay for this. Gaara, yelled Kankuro. Gaara, please. He looked across at the man who now held a shaky kunai in his hand. He looked back up to Kankuro and then over to the worried look on the Tsuchikage's face. Wow, a minute wasted, Naruto said, staring at the half-burned tag. Gaara looked back over to his begrudging opponent and the sand from his gourd busted out of the top. I'm so sorry, he whispered lowly, sending wave after wave towards the man who did his best to dodge the flood of sand. Losing his footing, he fell to his back and was engulfed completely. Gaara tried hard to kill the man, but for some reason he couldn't crush him. Suddenly a hand of stone burst from the sand. 30 seconds, Kazekage, Naruto said. Gaara grit his teeth and shut his eyes. Suddenly, his sand took on a much more demonic look with cracks covering its surface. His right eye turned black with a golden iris. With the help of the Shikaku, he was finally able to crush the man with ease. No! Yelled the Tsuchikage, beating the barrier with all she had. Fuck! She bellowed out as she dropped to the ground. Gaara felt remorse for his action, but relief seeing that the tag stopped its burning. A flash of light blinded him and he was back next to Kankuro. Everyone remained silent, staring at the mutilated body of the IWA shinobi. Naruto eyed the Tsuchikage, whose eyes were on the ground beneath her. He was waiting for the outburst, and sure enough he received it. She hit the barrier with all the strength she could muster. Let me out of here. I'll fucking kill you, she yelled. I swear on everything. I will fucking kill you, she yelled. Whether the threat was for Naruto or the Kazekage, no one knew. Naruto was not fazed by her worthless threats. He simply shrugged it off. A hand popped out of the ground within the arena and dragged Akatsuchi's body down. "Well, revenge seems to be on your mind," he said, going through hand signs. The Tsuchikage appeared in the arena, staring over to her opponent. "Shit," Kankuro whispered softly to himself. "No," the Kazekage yelled, seeing the danger. "Wait," Naruto just stared out, wondering what the Tsuchikage would do. Her hate-filled eyes pierced into the Kazekage's worried gaze. "When can I start?" she asked suddenly. Naruto shrugged. "This one's on you. If you don't want to do it, you may return to your barrier," he informed her. Kankuro released the breath he didn't know he was holding. His heart skipped a beat when a rock spear popped out of the ground and nearly punctured his chest. He jumped back just in time to avoid it. "Hey, what the hell?" he yelled out to her, pulling his favorite puppet from his back. The Tsuchikage went through hand signs and spit out some kind of strange lime concoction that covered Kankuro's prized puppet. The slime also covered his feet, holding him in place. "Hey, wait!" he yelled out, throwing his hands up. "Tsuchikage, please!" the Kazekage yelled out, begging for his brother's life. "He has a family. Please don't." The Tsuchikage stared at Kankuro's trembling body intently. Slowly, a rock spike rose from the ground next to her and she snapped it off. So did Akatsuchi. With no mercy, she threw the spike forward, impaling the helpless man. It tore through his head with ease, splitting his skull in two. Silence rang through the area, with everyone's eyes on either the dead body or the ghastly look on the Kazekage's face. "Let me out," the Kazekage said lowly, trying to draw on the powers of Shikaku. Naruto just stared at him. He knew at this point there was a blatant hatred resting between the two. It was an inevitability. "I said, let me out," he repeated with a disgusted look on his face. "In time, Kazekage," he said, looking back to the Tsuchikage. "The Tsuchikage hasn't truly played yet," he said, going through hand signs. In a flash of light, Kakashi appeared in the arena. "Hey, no!" Menma yelled out until Minato put his hand on his shoulder. "Menma, he'll be fine," he said. Naruto stared at Kakashi, knowing full well what was to happen. "Now," he said, looking towards the Tsuchikage. "Your revenge is out of the way. You fight for the survival of your prize." A muffled cry of desperation left the gauged mouth of Makatsuchi, seeing her tag lit aflame. "Your time begins, Kuratsuchi," he said, using her real name. Without hesitation, she chunked spikes of rocks at the Sharingan wielder. Kakashi jumped to the side, kicking off the barrier to avoid the next barrage. When he landed, he leaned back, avoiding the next strike. Quickly, he jumped up, dodging the slime she used against Kankuro. Figuring the only way to survive was to fight back, he rushed her with a kunai in hand. Kuratsuchi pulled one of her own and clashed with him. She began slashing at him like a woman possessed, and Kakashi was able to avoid all of them thanks to his Sharingan. Feeling desperate, she yelled out in anger. "Arg!" Kakashi got her off balance and kicked her away. He slipped in between the two spikes she shot out at him. Immediately, he had to dodge another that shot out of the ground. Going through hand signs, he slammed his hands on the ground and a wall of mud shot up in front of him, blocking the slime. He jumped away before the spike that jutted from the wall pierced his neck. Losing his footing, he rolled back and scrambled away from the airborne Kage coming down on him with another spike in her hand. To the horror of the Konoha individuals, she drove it straight through his chest. Naruto chuckled, seeing the clone burst into a cloud of smoke and the real Kakashi pop out of the ground, delivering a roundhouse kick to the Tsuchikage's face, sending her into the side of the barrier. 1 minute, Naruto informed the frustrated woman. She growled again and went through hand signs, puffing her chest full. She spit out big balls of lava that Kakashi had difficulty dodging. Jumping up, he was caught vulnerable in midair. She spit a ball of lava at his unprotected form. Thinking quickly, Kakashi packed his left eye with chakra and opened it, displaying his Mangekyo Sharingan. The ball of liquid flames was sucked into a portal in thin air. When he hit the ground, he covered his eye and nearly fell over from the backlash of using that technique. Quickly, he had to roll forward to avoid the spikes shooting out of the ground. He was cut alongside the back of his calf in his escape, inciting a yelp of pain. 10 seconds. Naruto said, upping the adrenaline factor once more. The Tsuchikige's panicked look stared up into the eyes of her best friend in desperation. Like a child begging for something, she squealed out a hollow, "Please!" That was either directed at Naruto or Kakashi. She threw everything she had at the silver-haired man who dodged each attack as best he could. He was just too hard to hit within the confines of 2 minutes. 5, 4, 3, 2. An explosion rocked the area as the kunai next to Makatsuchi shot off. A barrier shot up around her space, protecting the others on the ridge, but they all felt the violent tremor. None more so than Kuratsuchi, who froze in horror and stared at the smoked-out barrier that slowly cleared, revealing nothing but bits of what used to be her friend. Her face contorted into a look of true and undeniable pain. She hit her knees and covered her mouth to hide the silent scream that was stuck in the back of her mouth. "Arg!" she yelled out in sorrow. "Maka!" She hit the ground beneath her, and the surrounding viewers could feel her sadness from a distance. Kakashi more so than anyone as he sat back, trying to catch his breath. "It would seem that your prize has been eliminated. That means you have lost. If you so wish, you are free to go," he said, preparing to send her back to the platform her barrier once stood. She shook her head, causing him to stop to see what it was she would do. With tears still streaming down her eyes, she looked over to Kakashi with nothing but pure hatred. "Hey! No, wait!" yelled Menma. Being somewhat mimicked by Minato and Kushina, seeing that she was going to kill him, Kakashi scrambled back. In her last series of attacks, she was able to mess his leg up more than just the cut to his calf. He grit his teeth seeing her charge towards him. He was completely helpless at this point. He put too much chakra into that Mangekyo technique, and now he was left helpless. Naruto watched on in interest. In her rage-filled sprint towards the man that refused to die to save her friend, she pulled a spike from the ground. All she saw was red at this moment. In the span of an hour, she lost 2 of her closest people. She had long been sent over the edge, and she just had to kill someone. She had to. Bringing her hand down on the silver-haired jonin with a war cry, she was surprised when her wrist was caught by an unexpected man. It was the masked assailant responsible for all of this. He was here. Looking back up to his throne, she noticed he was gone. So this was the real one. "I cannot allow you to kill a participant. You have failed your task, so I give you 2 options. Either leave or die." She grit her teeth so hard they ached within her mouth. Seeing this as her chance, she drew a kunai from her pouch and swiped at him. In other words, she just agreed to die. Naruto hit her in the throat before her arm even came in range. Then, with absolutely no mercy, he kicked her back, impaling her on a spike that she herself had made. Kuratsuchi gasped at the rock sticking out of her chest, and she brought a shaking hand up to grab at it. She could feel her body slowly descending further down the earthen spike, and every second of it hurt. Naruto walked up to her and grabbed her by her hair. "You've done well, Tsuchikage. Your people would be proud," he said. "Well, what's left of them?" With that said, he snapped her neck with no mercy. Now, the others finally witnessed what it was they were dealing with. This man just defeated a Kage with such ease. Some of them just wrote it off as her being too emotionally distraught to fight properly. But Menma knew. He knew now more so than ever. Kakashi as well, but as for Minato, who knew what was going through his mind. "I apologize for this minor hiccup," Naruto said, turning around to Kakashi going through his hand signs. Kakashi appeared back in the barrier with the others. It was of course expected, as human emotions are a delicate thing. He went through hand signs again, and the area inside of the barrier returned to normal as if no battle had even taken place. "Now that such a hiccup is out of the way, let's continue," he said, flashing back up to his throne. "Hokage," Darui called out, eyeing Naruto suspiciously. "There is no longer any denying it. You know this man." Menma looked at him in worry. It was an inevitability, though. He refused to speak on it. Thankfully or unluckily, he didn't have to. "I know who this is," said a voice that had not yet been heard. One of the members of the Mizukige's group stepped forward. He was a much older man with blue hair and an eye patch. Years ago, during the rise of Konoha's popularity, due to the growing fame of Itachi Uchiha. There was another name that arose throughout the nation as well, the Second Flash. His statement hung in the air, and everyone had their gazes split between the two Hokage and their masked oppressor. "Is that you?" Naruto chuckled beneath his mask. "Heh, I'm a bit flattered. I didn't think that little title stuck enough for people to remember it," he said with a shrug. "He is from Konoha," the Kazekage said, drawing everyone's attention to Menma, who was staring at the furious redhead. "He is a shinobi of yours, and he has caused all of this." His hands were clenched so tightly on his sides. Menma had to say something. "Kazekage, I'm sorry. Who is he?" he asked lowly. He couldn't even bring himself to lift his gaze. That's where Menma froze. He couldn't spit it out even if he tried. "Who is he?" he replied, finally staring the blonde in the eyes. Menma's gaze did not shy away, he just shook his head. With a chuckle, Naruto decided to instigate the situation. "Heh, oh come on Otudo. Don't be ashamed of me now," he said, shocking the whole group. Everyone was staring at the Konoha group at this point. This was their family member? What? You didn't think just anyone could learn the Yandame's most prized possession, did you? He asked rhetorically. Finally, the red-headed woman that had remained silent throughout the entire ordeal finally stepped forward. "Naruto," she called out softly. Tears were already brimming in her eyes. Her heart had been broken one too many times by the man in front of her. Most of it was self-inflicted shots of pain, but this was on a whole new scale. This monster couldn't be her son. "Naruto, what is this for?" "Ah, Kasan," Naruto said somewhat softer than he had been all day. "Being in Uzumaki definitely has its benefits, huh?" he asked, completely disregarding her question. "You haven't aged a day." Even now he was, "Naruto, please stop this." He stared at her for a few seconds before standing up. He turned to look out towards the sea. The day was absolutely beautiful to him. It was a cloudy day with slivers of sunlight shining through the cracks in the clouds, causing streams of light to shoot down on the water. There was a faint clap of thunder that made its presence known every few seconds and brief sparks of lightning that didn't break the clouds. "It is a beautiful day, isn't it, Kasan?" he said, completely disregarding the others for the moment. "It would seem that my hair color isn't the only thing I inexplicably acquired over the years that I share with you," he said with a chuckle, running his hand through his blood-red hair. Kushina didn't know what to say. Everyone else was at a bit of a loss of words as well. He seemed to be acting somewhat civil with her as opposed to his cryptic badgering of everyone else. He seemed, in a way, much more gentle. "I guess that goes to show that I was right," he said, strolling back to his seat. He sat down and took Ino's hand. "Tsunade and I are more alike than I had imagined. Just as he put his books down for you, I put mine down as well," he said, looking at Ino. "Well, sort of." Ino slid her mask off her face. "Aw, babe," she cooed as she slithered over her throne and into his lap. Naruto chuckled. "What a pair of beautiful young ladies we have on our hands, Tsunade," he said as Ino snuggled into the side of his neck. "Menma as well. I guess we've just got a thing for powerful women," he said with yet another chuckle. "Please, Narukuin," Kushina said as she shook her head. She couldn't understand what this was. Why he was doing what he was doing. None of it made sense. He was mentally assaulting her with compliments? After everything he said, he still had the nerve to speak to them like everything was just completely normal. "Please stop this," she said again, desperation pouring from her tone. Naruto just stopped altogether. He just stared at her in wonder. Then, as if someone flipped a switch, he went back to normal. "I can't do that, Kasan. You know I'll die if I do," he said casually. "I'll die if I don't as well, but since I've already begun, I may as well have it mean something." Her pleading face continued to stare at him in confusion. Why are you doing this? Please, just tell me why," she begged. Naruto sighed and looked up to the sky in thought. He was trying to weigh his options right now. "Kasan, I am doing this because I want this all to end. I want someone to create a world better than this," he explained. "In order for that to happen, It has to destroy itself. Kushina was confused along with everyone else. Before she could speak up, the Reikage butt in. If it destroys itself, there will be nothing left for creation. Naruto just shook his head. No Reikage, actually that's wrong, he said, tilting his head. Shamelessly, Ino was kissing his neck aggressively, as if she were trying to tally up how many hickeys she could give him. You see, creation and destruction go hand in hand. Think about how a man would cut down a tree to build a home, or a group of men would cut down a forest to build a village. It's all a cycle of destroy to create again. Erase a man's mind and he's a new person. Erase the world and it has a second chance at life. Regardless of what you believe, this world is doomed to fail. The world is not doomed, said the Mizukage with a bit of an edge to his tone. For sick people like you, it is doomed because it doesn't allow you to control it. He argued. For sick people like me, he said, slowly examining those words. Ironic how wrong you are, he said carelessly. I mean, if you think about it, there is more wrong with a man who resigns to being like everybody else. It's truly disturbing how each one of you are currently fighting for the right to walk around like dead fish floating down a stream rather than being an individual. Synchronization and normality have become the new social norm, but if you were to go back years ago during the days of the clan wars, they would have laughed at such a thing. He said, that's the real issue. I mean, you laugh at me because I'm different, but I laugh at you because you're all the same. Wink. Your theories are derived from a psychotic mind and they will only make sense to you and that dumb bitch on your neck. Came the smooth feminine voice of the wife of the Reikage, who hadn't said much yet up to this point. Ino's head popped up instantly and she stared at Naruto, who just threw his hands up in an, I don't know, kind of pose. Ino quietly got off his lap and began walking towards the edge. It looked like she was going to step off, but right as she took that last step, there was a flash and she appeared inside the arena. Simultaneously, Samui appeared in there as well. She was much more alert now, though, seeing the intense look in the blonde's eyes briefly before she slipped her mask back on. Well, Naruto said, this should be interesting. Chapter 14. Rushing forward, two swords held in reverse grip, Ino jumped over the short-haired blonde woman who swung her own blade at her. Landing in a crouch, she jumped back, avoiding the next slash. Kicking off the wall, she rocketed towards her, swiping her sword out the way and delivering a kick to her chest, sending her rolling back. She waited for a few seconds, allowing her to get up. How dare she disrespect her in front of her love? She would pay in the worst way imaginable. They have been at it for a few good minutes already, and she had to admit she was kinda strong. Samui finally struggled back to her feet and stared across at this psychotic blonde. Her movements were completely unpredictable. Whatever her kenjutsu style was, she had never seen anything like it. It was incredibly flexible and unnaturally quick. Okay, ladies, Naruto said, drawing everyone's attention. This little spout is taking longer than expected. You're the boy's mother, so what the hell? He shrugged. Fight for your son. Actually, let's switch things up. You stay alive and so does your son. Doll? He said, getting Ino's attention. Try and kill her. Samui glanced over quickly to see her subdued child's tag lit aflame and wasted no time in rushing back into the fight. The Reikage placed his hand onto the hilt of his blade, ready to just bust through the barrier with force. He put his hand on his shoulder and shook his head. He has been extremely serious as opposed to his usual idiotic behavior. No bro, let Samui handle it, yo, he said, eyeing the masked man on the other side. The Reikage silently grit his teeth but released his sword nonetheless. Swinging her blade with unrivaled intensity, Samui was going for the kill, as the best way to keep from getting killed yourself was to put your opponent on the defense. She refused to lose to this blonde bimbo. Ino kicked her wrist away before her sword came within range. Attacking with both of her blades, Samui took the defensive and began backing away. Ino continued her volley of slashes, not letting up in the slightest. Feeling her time was running very thin, Samui planted her feet and kicked the blonde away from her. While she stumbled back, she drove her sword in the ground and went through hand signs. Pointing her fingers, the tips lit up in a very bright white light and shot off towards the blonde who had just recovered. Ino jumped away from the bullets of white that tore through the ground beneath her with ease. She had to keep moving as the blasts continued to shoot towards her, each one coming closer and closer. Thinking quickly, Ino drew an explosive kunai and threw it towards the next bullet headed towards her. Samui paused for a second with her vision clouded by the smoke. Then, when Ino jumped away from the cloud of smog, she continued her firing. With an accurate shot that was sent on a straight path to the masked girl's chest, Samui was kicked into the side of the barrier by the real one. Getting to her feet quickly, she rushed her again. Throwing a punch, she was infuriated by the woman's unnatural flexibility as she swiveled out of the way of each attack. 1 minute, Naruto called out. Samui furrowed her brow and continued on, doing her best to dodge the blonde's unorthodox attacks. Eventually, the two of them found their blades back in their hands and they danced in a shower sparks and slashes. Samui was getting completely demolished as Ino parried all of her attacks with one blade and delivered small, seemingly insignificant slashes with the other. Slowly, however, she noticed her body was refusing to do what she wanted it to. She was simultaneously using the hilt of her blades to hit her pressure points. Creating an opening, Ino made a deep cut on the back of Samui's calf, dropping her to the ground. She realized the masked girl's tactic too late and her body wouldn't move. The Raikage and B watched in shock as she brought her sword up for the finishing blow. Just as he put his hand on the hilt of his blade, Naruto called out, "Time!" Ino's blade lingered right at the neck of the woman. "Babe!" She whined as if begging him to let her kill her. Samui was left helpless, her arms and legs riddled with tiny cuts and bruises that seemed insignificant at first glance when in truth were a lot more effective than anyone thought. She couldn't even lift her fingers. She was completely humiliated with a blade pointing at her neck. Now, Ino," Naruto replied with a gentle tone. "You had 2 minutes just like everyone else," he said, nodding his head towards her. Ino huffed and flicked the small amounts of blood off of her blades. In a flash of light, she was back in her throne with her arms and legs crossed, clearly not happy about the whole ordeal. Samui breathed a sigh of relief as she looked up to her son who was crying for her. Darui and B had also calmed down as well, seeing everything would be fine. "Hey, you gonna send her back? She's injured," the Raikage said, not liking that she was still down there. Naruto looked at her immobile form and began looking around at everyone. Ino could tell he was having an idea. When he stared over at the Mizukage's party, something in his mind clicked. He looked over to their prize, his wife. Then he looked back over to Samui, who physically could not move. "Did you hear me? She's hurt," the Raikage said again. He noticed how the man's head looked around at everyone, ignoring him completely. Ino was trying to follow Naruto's head movements. "Whatcha thinking, babe?" she asked. Naruto stood to his feet and began casually pacing behind the prizes, the direction of his mask never giving away the direction he was looking or what kind of sick action he was planning next. "Actually, I think this is a perfect opportunity to prove a point," he said, strolling towards the right side of the platform. He stopped directly behind the last person on the prize slot. A woman with short brown hair, hunched over on her knees, trying to avoid his detection. Naruto stared at the Mizukage from this distance. The blue-haired man did not shy away from his gaze, in part because he couldn't see it. A sickening feeling arose in the pit of his stomach, figuring it was their turn. All he had to do was follow the man's rules. If he had to kill someone, then he would do so without a shred of hesitation. He had to. "Mizukage, your fiancée here, Ms. Ayakaroyo?" he asked him rhetorically, already knowing the answer. The Mizukage just glared at him dangerously. "She has never been a shinobi, correct?" he asked. Once again he received no reply as expected. "Well, she hasn't," he said, cutting the rope tying her hands together and ripping the chain from around her neck. He grabbed her by her arm and pulled her to a standing position, ignoring her muffled pleas for her life. "Hey!" the Kage in question yelled as he stepped up to the side of the barrier. He put his hands on it and leaned forward as if he were trying to get a better view. "Don't hurt her," he yelled out frantically. Naruto ignored him and walked forward a bit. Ignoring him for the time being, he spoke to the other remaining members, namely Gaara. "Now, you claim we aren't all monsters. I say, we are," He grabbed her by the throat and held her over the side of the cliff to the horror of the Kiri group and his family. Her hands wrapped around his wrist and her bulging brown eyes stared into his eye holes, pleading desperately. "Naruto! Wait! No!" yelled Minato, putting his hands out as if telling him to calm down. Naruto ignored all of the outraged cries of protest and continued on. Now, his mask was looking towards the woman in his hand. He spoke as if he were talking to her. "When your way of life or your life itself is threatened, you will do absolutely anything to maintain it," he said, holding the kicking woman up with absolute ease. "It's the law of human nature. If it's an action with an immediately positive outcome, even if there is another way, we will take it if that other way isn't a sure thing. Please!" the Mizukage yelled, hitting the barrier with his giant sword. "I'll do whatever you want," he said, his eyes darting into the middle platform, seeing that Samui was still there. "You want me to kill her? I'll do it. Just please." That proclamation garnered a daring look from the Raikage's party, of course. But he didn't even spare them a glance. Naruto looked over to the blue-haired man at that. He just eyed him lazily. "Tempting," he said. "But no." Just like that, he unclenched his hand and Aya fell. Outrageous gasps and a hell-curling scream from the Mizukage himself filled the air. He packed his sword with chakra and hit it as hard as he could with a war cry. Before he hit it again, his attention was drawn to the middle barrier where Aya landed unceremoniously in a flash of light, her eyes nearly popping out of her head and her tears returning full force. She landed on her back and ungracefully rolled over to get to her knees. In another flash of light, a kunai appeared directly in front of her. "I want her to do it," Naruto finished, looking down to the fearful civilian woman. The Raikage and the Mizukage shouted out in protest, screaming their own words of hatred-filled threats at the redhead. Naruto casually walked back to his throne and sat down, his gaze landing directly across from him, into the unreadable expression on his brother's face. "For your freedom, Aya," he called out, still looking into the eyes of Menma. "Kill this woman and you and your party are free to walk away," he said, surprising everyone. Aya's eyes were on the blade in front of her, tears streaming from her eyes uncontrollably. "You choose not to kill her, and you and your party remain for the duration of the game in which your husband will eventually have to fight for you," he said. The first thought that ran through her mind was, of course, she wouldn't do it. She would just wait for Chojuro to save her. But then she thought about the Tsuchikage's violent end. The man she brought with her died at the hands of another Kage. Her eyes traveled up to their platform. What if Ao or Haki were chosen to face off against the Raikage or the Hokage? They wouldn't stand a chance. By choosing to stay, she'd be choosing for them to die instead, even though it wasn't a guarantee Chojuro would save her or not. She looked back down to the kunai and then up into the eyes of the immobile woman in front of her. Her heart and brain were tearing themselves apart, both making sound arguments for each scenario. She cried out hysterically. She didn't know what to do. "A monstrous action for certain freedom?" Naruto called out blandly. "Or a righteous action for an unassured chance at life?" he asked her ominously, further distorting her will. The constant screaming of those around her was feeding her anxiety as well. The look in the woman's eyes was eating her soul, even from the considerable distance. She hadn't said anything. She just stared back at her, tears beginning to fall from her eyes. Aya reached forward with a very shaky hand and grabbed the kunai. Holding it up, she stared at the very tip of it and looked back to the blonde woman. Standing to her feet, she slowly walked forward until she was right in front of Samui. She dropped to her knees and stared at her, trying to steady her resolve. She had to do it. This man was a complete psycho. As soon as she refused, he would do something worse to them. She knew it. He spoke as if he knew she would end up killing this girl. He was trying to prove a point to everyone here, and if she refused to feed in and made him wrong, there's no telling what he'd do. "Don't do it!" yelled the Raikage, pushing against the glass in frustration. "Don't you fucking do it!" He looked across the way at his son, who was witnessing the whole thing. "Don't look, son. Look away," he pleaded. He was quiet behind him, watching the whole thing play out. It broke his heart, but he kept his composure, knowing nothing they did would change the outcome. The Mizuki's shouts were of course telling her to do it. If it was a sure way to save her life, he needed her to do it. Every now and then, he looked back to the masked man and cursed him for making his soon-to-be wife do something of this magnitude. But if it was a way out, he needed her to do it. Aya-chan, just do it. Please, just do it. It'll be over quick. In their contradicting pleas to the woman, they locked eyes with each other a couple of times, shouting out curse words and hate-filled remarks before immediately going back to yelling their threats/encouragements at the weak-minded woman. The Konoha bunch tried calming the two down before things got out of hand, but their words were consistently overshadowed by the two adrenaline-fueled men screaming their heads off. Aya peered into Samui's eyes. She had never killed anyone before. Could she even do this? This woman had a husband who was watching and threatening what would happen if she did. A child who was watching. How could she take her life like this? Before she realized it, the sounds around her drowned out completely, and she was left alone with her thoughts once again. Her eyes were on the kunai in her hands. Hands that wouldn't stop shaking. They wouldn't stop. Tears were hitting her wrists as she tried to ration with herself and convince herself this was the right thing to do. Naruto sighed and looked out towards the sea. From the positioning of the beams of light, he could guess it was possibly a little past noon. The uproar of voices all mangling together was giving him a headache. Aya, you do not have all day. You either do it or miss the opportunity. He said loud enough for her to hear him over all the commotion. She clenched her eyes shut and opened them back up to look at the kunai in her hands. She steadied her heart and drowned the sounds of the others screaming at her out. With a heavy heart and shaking hands, she brought the blade up over her head, which simultaneously threw fuel on the fire, upping the intensity of the screaming happening around her. With her eyes shut and an unintentional scream of frustration, she drove the kunai down. Metal met flesh and bone, and she could hear and feel the blood gushing out from the chest of this woman in front of her. She couldn't take it anymore. She pulled the blade out and drove it down again. And again and again. The area was quiet, stunned in silence at the brutality of the scene. The only sounds remaining were the grunts of effort and frustration from Aya, the squishing of her hands and the blade plunging in and out of Samui's bleeding chest, and the muffled crying of the child who was watching his mother getting butchered to death by a woman that had cared for him in his brief time of captivity. The raikage hit his knees. No expression on his face describable in any real terms. His hands rested on his lap and he watched on as the woman stabbed Samui over and over again. The Mizukage was watching just as silently. He watched his fiancée's mind tear itself to shreds with every stab. She would never be the same. This was something he had never imagined seeing in his lifetime. Something he'd never wished to see. Sorrow and remorse filled his heart for the man on the opposite side of the formations. They didn't deserve this. They were all victims in this. He was glad his wife was safe, but the action she had to take to do so was horrendous. He set his heart to rest just rationalizing with himself that being put in the same situation, he would have expected his wife to do the same. He prayed he understood that. Aya had finally stopped her violent stabbing of the already deceased woman, and she threw the kunai away from her. She bent down and cried out continuous streams of apologies for the dead woman before her. She had to do it. She had to. That's what she told herself over and over again. In her hunched-over state, she threw up whatever was left in her stomach from the last time she ate. Tears and pleas for forgiveness rushed out along with it. Naruto watched the whole scene play out before him. His eyes were on the expressions of his family. They watched the sight with unbelieving gazes just like everyone else. It seemed like this was just too much of a revelation. The red-headed Kazekage watched on in contained shock as well. None of them could grasp the concept of the actions just taken. Animal is a derogatory word that inaccurately describes what we are, he said suddenly, drawing the attention back to him. When someone is cruel, we are all so quick to call them an animal. Yet when you truly nitpick it, humans are the only animals capable of such atrocities. So, in other words, he said, looking down to the two women in the barrier. Aya, you're a human, and you're also free to go, he said, letting the barrier fall. The Mizukage's barrier fell as well, freeing him and his two chosen attendants. He didn't waste any time in jumping down to his fiancée. He wrapped her up in a hug, hiding her eyes from the horrendous sight of the mutilated blonde before them. He scrunched his nose up at the stench and looked up to the masked man. Naruto could see the anger in his eyes. If you wish to end up like the Tsuchikage, you are free to attack me as you please, he said ominously. Your prize has won her own freedom. Take this opportunity to leave while you can. The Mizukage glared up at him, and for a second, the others thought he was going to attack him. He picked his fiancée up in a bridal carry while still eyeing the masked assailant. If they don't kill you when this is all over, I swear I'll find you, he said with pure hatred resting behind his eyes. Showing no fear, Naruto nodded his head sharply, still unfazed by the meaningless threat. With his piece said, the Mizukage turned to leave, stopping as he caught the eye of the Raikage who was staring right back at him. Had it been your wife, you'd have expected her to do the same, he said to try and get him to understand. The Raikage just stared at him for a second, a look of disgust crossing his face. Sadly for you, it wasn't my wife. The threat taken and understood completely, the Mizukage nodded his head and began walking away. He and his men jumped off of the cliff before the middle barrier shot back up, leaving just 3 more groups. A clone dragged Samui's body down and cleaned the area for the next event, which was still undecided. Naruto looked at them all, as if he were thinking about what he was to do now. Let's see, he said quietly, tapping his hands on his armrests trying to think of something. Well, I'm not too interested in fighting any more than one Biju, he said going through hand signs. In a flash of light, the Kazekage and Bi appeared on either side of the arena, both of them stock silent, not looking to play any games. The anger was just bubbling around them. Literally, when they hit the arena, red chakra began bubbling around them. Well, Kazekage, for a man who advocates against the monstrosity of mankind, you know a lot about what that's like, he said eyeing him. The Kazekage didn't respond to his pointless words. Instead, his gourd began falling apart before it produced a tail made of sand. The sand began covering most of his form until the top half of his body represented a much smaller version of the Shikaku. B's form remained the same other than the red silhouette of the Hachibi surrounding his body. His eyes couldn't be seen behind his glasses and his facial expression didn't seem to give much away, but from studying up on the guy, Naruto could tell he was far beyond angry himself. Figuring this was sure to be a good match, Naruto just sat back and snuggled into his seat. Oh, and if you haven't noticed, this seal won't allow you to fully transform, for obvious reasons, he said with a shrug. No stakes in this one. You two just seem angry enough to rip anything to shreds, so have at it, he said. Needing nothing more, B rushed forward with his arm held out. The inside of his elbow met the throat of the sand creature, and contrary to what he expected, he began sinking in. He spun around and ripped the appendage from the sand and kicked him away. The Kazekage hit the wall of the barrier with the sand cushioning his blow. With no hesitation, he got up and rushed the Kumo Jinchuriki. Throwing his arm forward, the sand extended and missed the slippery man by an inch. In her throne, Ino yawned, drawing Naruto's attention. This is kinda boring, hun, she said honestly. I'm gonna take a nap. Naruto raised an eyebrow beneath his mask, but shrugged his shoulders and went back to watching the battle. The Kazekage was confused when B rolled to his feet, now holding every sword that was on his form at once. There was one tucked in the wedges of each of his coiled arms, one in his mouth, one held by the back of his knee, one in the crook of his neck, and one in the crevasse between his thigh and stomach. He doubted they could be used as such. Expertly, B jumped through the air, missing the tendril of sand that shot at him. He threw 2 of his swords down in hopes of impaling the man inside. He couldn't hurt sand, but if he could get to the Kazekage inside, he could kill him and the Shikaku would die as well and wait to reform elsewhere. When he landed, he rolled forward and picked up the 2 swords he threw. Continuing on, he dodged sand bullet after bullet. Rolling under the final one, he went in to try and shove his sword through. As soon as it came within range, a plate of sand shot up from the ground, blocking it before it even hit the main body. B loosened his grip and kicked the hilt of the blade on his way back. When he landed, he was standing on a thin strip of sand. When it shifted, he fell to his back. He looked up at the wave about to crash down on him. The Kazekage clenched his sand-formed hand down, directing the wave of golden substance to crush the man. Before it hit him, a tentacle appeared out of nowhere, blocking the man's body from the assault. Pulling the sand back, he saw that B now had two very big tentacles protruding from somewhere on his back. This meant he was proficient in partial transformations as well. He ignored that revelation and sent out more waves of sand to try and cover him completely. B swiped the tendrils out of his way with the tentacles and rushed forward with the swords still on his form. Clearing a path to the core, he threw one of his blades at his head. Before it came in range again, a sheet of sand popped up. He was thinking of a way around that armor of his. His control of sand meant he was an earth-based ninjutsu fighter. If he attacked with lightning, maybe he could wear him down some. He rushed forward, charging his remaining 5 blades with lightning chakra, and began attack the main creature directly, letting the tentacles keep him safe from the sand. He flipped and slashed at every conceivable angle of the beast, but nothing was getting through. Losing focus, he landed into a sinking pool of sand that began swallowing him whole. He scrambled up, trying to stick his tentacles to anything that would pull him up, but nothing would stick thanks to all the sand. Darui was watching in horror, thinking this may be too much for even B. Seeing him sink into the unexplainable sinkhole got him worried. B was resilient, but he had just a few hours ago watched a man with the protection of an armor of rock crushed by this very same man. His worries were relieved when he watched as the sand seemed to become much more mud-like than before. 2 of B's tentacles shot out from the muddied sinkhole of sand and stuck to the barrier, sling shooting him out of the substance. He remained up high off of the ground with his tentacles sticking to the hard surface of the barrier. While up there, he got his idea. It seemed that water was the obvious weakness, which was good because it was an easy solution. Going through hand signs, he puffed his chest out and shot bullet after bullet of water towards the sand creature. Seeing the danger, the Kazekage used the sand he made from the ground to block the water, while simultaneously making more. He knew the man's plan was to drench all of his sand, leaving him defenseless, but he could work with that. He blocked each of the water bullets in order to protect the sand armor of the shikaku surrounding his body. He kept them coming plentiful, increasing their size by pumping more and more chakra into each blast. He had to keep moving around the top of the barrier to avoid getting caught by the counterattacks being sent his way. He didn't know any area-wide water techniques, so these water bullets would have to do it for now. The Hachibi was explaining that the weakness of the shikaku's containers when they were in this state was at the base of the tail. So that would have to be his striking point. They continued in their battle of hit and counter-hit for a few minutes until B noticed that there was nothing left for the Kage to use other than mud, which was too slow and weak to actually be effective. So he swung forward and landed near the muddied creature with his swords drawn again. The mud was wrapping around his ankles trying to hold him in place, but he was just walking through it with ease. It was just like walking through regular mud. The Kazekage played the role, expertly swiping away as he scrambled back. He truly looked like a helpless victim. When B finally began rushing, however, his stoic look returned. B circled him until he got behind him and targeted the vulnerable spot. He went in for the attack, but just when he drove his sword forward, a tendril of chakra shot up and caught his wrists, lifting him from the ground. B struggled, trying to use his tentacles to swipe it away. As soon as he did, 2 skinnier tendrils of sand shot through the mud, cutting it off. He brought out another which met the same fate. Darui's eyes grew in alarm, not even understanding how that could even happen. It was just sand. B! He yelled out, seeing how helpless he seemed. B was confused as well. The sand was just slicing his tentacles off. That wasn't possible unless that was some kind jutsu or... His eyes grew when the skinny tendrils that were slicing the tentacles rose in front of his face. There was a glimmer from the tips before they drove forward, one going straight through his head, and the other through his chest, the blades of his discarded swords popping out of the back of his head and chest. The swords he so carelessly let sink into the sand at the start of this little battle. "No!" yelled the Raikage, hitting the barrier with his sword. "No, no, no. Twice today he has watched someone die. B, of all people, he was sure couldn't lose. He stared at the masked man who began clapping at the outcome of the battle. "You bastard! I'll fucking kill you!" he yelled, hitting the barrier over and over again with his blade, not even aware that his son was watching him lose his mind. Naruto ignored the screams for his head from the usually level-headed Kage. He was slowly clapping for the Kazekage who had let the mud fall of his form as he stared at the Kumo shinobi that fell before his feet. In a flash of light, he was back in his spot, staring at the ground. A clone once again struck the arena of the previous battle before sinking into the ground. Naruto stared across the way at his fellow redhead who was completely silent. "Well, I must say that was a very impressive display there, Kazekage," he said, looking over at his prize. "You're a very formidable man, as was the famous Killer Bee," he said, nodding to the Raikage who was still cussing him out. "I'm trying to decide what to do with you. You've withstood each of my tasks and have done so with extreme grace. I'm not sure if that warrants enough respect to let you leave yet," he said, negating the fact that he allowed the Mizukage to leave without ever having to do anything. "Have I been unfair with you?" The Kazekage looked him in the eyes with pure hatred. He hated everything about him at this moment. Not that he was too fond of him before, but now he was sure he was going to kill him. I have for a reason," he said, sitting up. "None of you have noticed yet the true reason I've done this," he said, standing up. "I mean, it's not like you all haven't been in these positions before. It's just now you know what it's like to have it happen in real time," he said, pacing around. "Out of all of you, who's gone?" he asked, looking around as if he were confused. Everyone's gaze met the empty pillars of both IWA and Kiri. "Ah, yes, IWA. A nation built on the arrogance of their ancestors. The sickening having such a nation running around, isn't it? They are gone because of their refusal to forgive. They lived on the cusp of revenge. In this experiment, their anger was directed towards Suna. Had she forgiven the actions of the Kazekage for doing what he did when he had no choice, she would have returned to her spot to fight another day and probably would have received an opponent she could actually beat within the given time slot. But her need for revenge was just too much for her to bear, and she killed in vengeance. Now, Minato was starting to understood. These selections of his weren't as random as he claimed they were. It was a cycle of cause and effect. Now, you may be wondering why I allowed Kiri to leave without so much as stepping foot into the arena, right? He asked, not receiving an answer. Well, it's simple. Kiri is a nation known for shooting themselves in the foot, which is what they did. In this case, it wasn't the Kage of Kiri that represented them. No, Kiri's Kage have been known to disappoint, so of course, I went to the people instead. Aya refused to give up the chance for certain freedom because of her fear of failure on her Kage's part. The Raikage sent him a death glare. He allowed them to kill his wife for a fucking experiment? Had she refused to kill the young lady, rest her soul? He said, looking over to the Raikage, which infuriated him. Then, perhaps they would have lived longer, he said with a shake of his head. Everyone was confused by this. Minato spoke up for everyone. You let them go? Or did you? He asked, now fearing that he had something waiting for them. Naruto put his mind to rest. No, I did, he said, nodding his head. But I doubt the Raikage will be letting that slide by so easily, he said, looking over to him. You're damn right, he spit out. And as soon as I'm finished with them, I'm coming for you, he said with a deathly look in his eyes. He looked completely insane. Naruto smiled beneath his mask. Oh, of course. And then Suna, I'm guessing, he said, nodding over to the Kazekage who wasn't affected by the threat. The Raikage didn't express it, but he agreed. And what of you, Kazekage? Is IWA still on that list of yours? He asked, looking over to him. Finally, he pulled his head up, a dead look in his eyes that spoke volumes about his psyche. IWA will fall. Just as Kumo will fall. Just as Konoha. None of you deserve to live, he said ominously. Menma looked over to him in surprise. Kazekage-san, he said in an attempt to reason with him. He was still angry that Naruto originated from Konoha. Naruto is no longer a shinobi of Kono-. I don't care. You'll fall too, he said lowly, no hint of a joke in his dead eyes. Suna, Naruto said, drawing everyone's attention again. The nation that has fought their way out of the disgrace of the sand dunes to mark their place in this world. They take the most beating, but persevere and fight on. Kumo, the nation that holds strong in their belief of power and rule but remain firm in their qualities of self-reliance. Then there is you. Konoha, the Kazekage and Reikage both eyed them in suspicion. If there was a reason they were still untouched, then what was it? Oh yes, the nation that everyone loves to hate. You sit atop your throne and scathed and watch as everyone else tears themselves apart. The definition of a false god, he said. Hold on, Minato said, trying to defend them. We're only unscathed because you haven't chosen any of us, he said, pointing out the obvious. Of course I haven't. There's been no need to, he said, as if he just gave them a huge revelation. Without any help at all. You lot gain the most enemies. Why is that? He asked with a sincere tone, as if he were really asking. Your power, he said with a nod. Minato and Menma looked at each other in confusion. Now he was telling them things they already knew. This isn't news to us. The more power you gain, the bigger the target on your back, we get it, he said, as if he figured out the next cracked-out philosophical theory Naruto had coming up. Well, actually it's not that, he said, shocking them. It's actually the opposite. Your false power is what I should have said, he said with a nod. You believe your village is the strongest because of the people you hold within. With individuals such as Kakashi of the Sharingan, the Red Death, the entire Uchiha clan, the Hyuga, the Yellow Flash, the list goes on and on. You have grown arrogant in your seat at the top. Now, you walk around and flaunt your abilities off as if they were just badges of honor or something, he said in disgust. Are you saying we are weak? Menma asked, truly confused by what he was trying to say. On the contrary, Naruto said, now they were truly confused. Everything they said, he would say the opposite. Which one was it? You're strong, but your village as a whole is very weak. With the individuals you have, there is an unquestionable struggle of power that you yourself aren't even aware of, Naruto said. Now he was talking as if he knew something they didn't. How well do you know your people, Menma? Naruto asked. Now he was truly confused. What the hell are you talking about? He yelled out. Your people, Menma, he said, slowing down his speech in a mocking way. How well do you know them? Minato took the initiative and placed his hand on Menma's shoulder. We know them well, Naruto. Far better than you do, he said in a brief moment of arrogance. Naruto chuckled beneath his mask. I would argue that case too, San, he said with a grin. In fact, I'd venture into saying that you are completely unaware of what goes on within the shadows of that great tree of yours. You live in ignorance of a village that does not follow you, contrary to what you may believe. Friendship is a fickle thing, and let's just say I learned that the hard way. What are you trying to say? Menma asked, not liking what he was implying even though he didn't actually understand it. It sounded like he was saying they had traitors in the village, which he wouldn't stand to hear. Naruto just shrugged and walked towards the Reikage's prize slot. Well, if you don't get it, that's fine. You will eventually, he said cryptically. Get the fuck away from him, the Reikage yelled, seeing Naruto standing behind his son. That was all he had now, and he'd be damned if he lost him too. Naruto stared him in the eyes and went through hand signs. In a flash of light, the carrier holding the Kazekage's nephew appeared in the center arena. The barrier fell, as did the Kazekage's. You've done well, Gaara. You are free to go. I believe you get the point. Gaara said nothing. He grabbed his nephew and left. Once he was gone, the barrier arose once again. Going through hand signs, the Reikage appeared within it. As do you, Reikage, he said, breaking the collar from the boy's neck. In a flash of light, the boy was in the barrier, stumbling from the disorientation. The Reikage caught him before he fell. He hugged him to his chest and glared up at Naruto. The barrier fell again. The look he was giving him was enough to know that there would be hell to pay if he didn't die here. He turned to leave and stared up at Minato and Naruto. Another monster from Konoha. He shook his head and walked off, letting his statement hang in the air. When he left, Naruto chuckled. Wow, is that what Konoha is known for? Ha, he said as if everything were just normal. Minato stepped up to address him. What now? He asked, looking around at all the empty slots. What do we have to do to get her back? Naruto looked down at the sleeping child in the carrier. He shrugged his shoulders and sent her down to the arena in a flash. The barrier around them fell as well. Nothing. Congratulations for effortlessly surviving, he said. They all jumped down and Kushina picked up Samaire. Naruto and Ino sat on their thrones lazily staring at the group. While Naruto was staring at them, Ino was still asleep. Menma and Minato stepped forward, staring off against the two of them, their intentions clear. We're not letting you two go, Menma said seriously. You didn't expect us to just leave, did you? Naruto leaned his head on his hand. Of course not, Otudo. That'd be too easy, he said in a condescending tone. Menma grit his teeth. Before he did anything, his mother stepped forward with the baby in her arms. Naruto, are you not done? She asked him incredulously. Everyone's gone. We're not going to kill you, she said. Naruto chuckled and looked past her. TCH, speak for yourself, he said, eyeing his father. Isn't that right, Tusan? Kushina spun around, seeing he had already pulled his kunai. Minato, why? Kushina, take Samaire and Kakashi home, he said with a serious tone, his distraught expression telling her all she need to know. She slowly shook her head, knowing what he was saying. No, she said lowly. No, you can't do this. You're not gonna kill him. Minato, he's our son, she yelled. What if he kills you? Then I'll probably deserve it. Kushina, it's like you said. This is our fault. He looked up to Naruto, trying to convince himself as well. And we have to fix it. Kushina looked down to Samaire while he spoke. She did say that. Those were words from her own mouth, so watch changed now. Nothing did, she was right then, just as Minato is right now. She shut her eyes and kissed Sumaire's forehead. She handed her to Kakashi. Then, I'm staying, she said, turning around and looking up at the two as well. Minato was about to dispute it, but she beat him to the punch. We have to fix it, she said, giving him a look that told him she wasn't leaving. Minato sighed and nodded to her. Ino yawned as her eyes fluttered open. Ugh, she said, looking around. Wow, everyone's already gone, she said, smiling over at Naruto. We finally gonna fight the family? She asked, as if this were a story told to her before. Naruto smirked and nodded. Yeah, it seems like it, he said, standing to his feet with her following his lead. Let's give him hell doll face.